What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the workshop. I hope you're all doing well. Now, in this video, I'm building a nice little shoe rack with some nice joinery. So, my daughter came to me the other day and said she wanted a shoe rack. Now, she's only just turned 4, so I said, what do you want a shoe rack for? She said, well, Mammy has put my shoes in my book rack. And I said, well, I can see how that's a problem. I mean, you don't read your shoes or wear your books, so you don't want to get them confused. And she said, yeah, and now my knees don't work. I was like, well, what happened to your knees? She said, I hurt my knees bending down past my books to get my shoes. And I said, if your knees don't work, how did you get here? She said, well, they're working now, she goes, but they might not work again. And I said, well, can't argue with that logic. I'll build you a shoe rack. So that's what I'm doing. I'm upcycling some old furniture. I have some oak left over from that bookcase that I pulled apart. So we've some nice joinery in this one. So we've got some true tenons, wedge tenons, some decorative sapele wedges in them, some wedges, mortise and tenons, top and bottom, nice curved sides, split design in the middle. And yeah, so there's a nice little bit of joinery in this. It's a good mix of hand tool and power tool woodworking, and you can scale this one up to any size. Yeah, so hopefully you enjoy this build, guys. Let's crack on it and do it. Now, just before we crack on, I want to very quickly thank Tradify for sponsoring today's video. Now, Tradify is one of the fastest growing job management platforms in the world, specifically designed for tradespeople. So it's used by tradesmen and women all over the world, including myself, and I'm over 16 years working as a self-employed electrician, and it saves me hours every week on the office work. So it's all your administration and office work in one place. It's desktop and mobile based, so you can carry your office with you in your pocket. It's everything from generating professional looking documents such as invoices and quotations, even scheduling jobs. You can manage a small crew through it. It takes care of all that headaches, and you can even tie it in with your accounting software as well at the end of the year. So it does so much more than that, but the main thing it does is save a massive amount of time. I save about 8 hours a week, I reckon, on office work alone using it, and it just makes it super simple to fire off some quotations and to shoot out some invoices and even track them and stay on top of your cash flow. So I'll link it below in the description. Definitely check it out. There's a 14-day free trial, no strings attached. Play around with it and see how it helps you in your business. And there's also a promo code MANINSHED, which will give you 50% off for your first 3 months. So that's linked below. Let's crack on. Okay, let's crack on with this project. Now, like I've probably said already, I'm upcycling some old furniture. So I have some of an old oak bookcase. It's all just made of laminate pieces. It's not too fancy or anything like that, but we're going to upcycle it rather than throwing out some good timber. So, first port of call with this is to free flatten this. There's waves and humps and bumps in it everywhere. So I'm just going to flatten this shelf, and we'll get 2 sides of our shoe rack out of this, and then 2 sides of another shelf. I won't go into the design just yet. You might have seen it at the start of the video, so hopefully it has worked out. What I like to do is just keep a little sketchbook to hand and just jot down some ideas for projects. Anything that comes to mind, just do a quick sketch of it, then try and refine it over and over again. So I have a quick sketch of what I want it to look like when it's finished. I don't quite have the dimensions, so I also like to design things as I'm building them, just to see how everything works proportionally. It's always nice when you see something coming together, whether you want to change it or not change it. It's good to see the actual physical thing come together. So I have a rough idea. We have enough to start, so let's start flattening. Now, this piece kind of has moved a good bit, but it's wavy across the board rather than down the board. So I'm going to have to work across it to take down those high spots, because it's fairly consistent where it's risen up, because it's a laminate piece and it's kind of done that. So there's no point planing down the board, because I'm not going to get those flat spots and high spots. So I have to kind of go across the board. So I've just wedged it with my wagon voice there. I'm just going to work diagonally across the board just to take down the high spot, because it's a high spot the whole way down. And like I said, there's no point in planing this way until I get it even across the way. Okay, so I have 2 boards prepared, and I'm going to use this to get my 4 sides out of. So I'm going to do a kind of a split design. So I just sketched out a rough design. First kind of iteration was this one. I was going to do something very similar to the book rack that I did, true tenons with keys, hold everything together with like little wedged keys, and there'll be no gluing or screwing. I've decided to go with wedged tenons instead, so we're going to make it like this. And again, this is just a quick rough sketch. Anything that comes to mind, I just sketch it out. So I've just put in some rough dimensions here so I know what I'm working to. So we're going to have a gap in the middle. I'm going to make 2 curved pieces. So we need to get 2 out of this board and 2 out of this board. And they're going to be 100 mil at the bottom, or 4 inches. We'll have a 20 mil gap in the center. That's roughly 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to take the top down to 70 mil, which is about 2 3/4 inches. So 4 inches at the bottom, 2 3/4 inches at the top. And then we're going to have, I haven't decided on the final design of this yet, so we're going to have some sort of a curved top, almost kind of like a Japanese style kind of look about it, something like that. Haven't fully decided, but we'll make that out of sapele and make the bottom out of sapele as well, and we'll do some tenons to put them in. So it'll be nice split down the middle, and the shelves will be one piece, so they'll actually hold these 2 pieces together. That's the general idea. That's what we're at, just to give you guys a quick idea rather than me just doing loads of work and not explaining anything. So we've got to split these now. The 2 of these, we need to get 2 boards of 100 mil or 4 inches wide out of each of these. Then we can draw in our shape of our curve that's pleasing to the eye. We'll cut that on the bandsaw and we'll finally shape it with a spoke shave. Let's get on. Okay, there's our 4 sides cut. Now I just want to put the curve in them. So I've just marked into 70 mil here. So I'm going to take the top down to 70 and leave the bottom at 100 mil or 4 inches. So I'm just going to take a piece of timber I have here. It's nice and flexible. We can use this for our curve. So I'm just going to hold it at 70 millimeters here. Bring it right out to the edge down here. Just hold it with my hip. And I'm just going to bend this in until I see a curve that I'm happy with. I'm not going to take it too severe because we're going to lose a lot of material. So it's going to be a nice little gradual, shallow curve. And I only need to mark one of these because I can cut this out then and use that to mark the rest. So yeah, I think nice little curve right about there should be good. We'll draw that in. Okay, so the curves are cut. I just took a bit of double-sided sticky tape and stuck the 2 pieces together, lining up their edges and ends perfectly. Clamp that in the vise, and now I'm just going to work in these curves to even them up with the spoke shave. Now the only problem is the grain is moving in different directions on both pieces, so I kind of have to do one side this way and the other side the other way. But yeah, we can work around that. There we go, a nice matched in curve, and that is silky smooth now. So a razor sharp spoke shave, and you'll get a better finish than you'll ever get with sandpaper. So those 2 are matched together nicely now. And again, using spoke shaves, you always have to come at it from both sides, especially with a curve, because the grain will always be going in opposite directions and it can be a bit of a pain. But perseverance and you shall get there. Okay guys, here's where I'm at. Both of the uprights for the two sides are done. I have them matched in pairs. This side is slightly darker, this side is slightly lighter, but it is what it is. We're using some, like I said, recycled timber, so we have what we have. But we have them matched nicely now, so that should be good. Now, I just took another shelf, I split it in half, and this is going to be our two cross pieces, so we'll have two essentially shelves for putting her shoes on, top and bottom. Now, I've just marked it out here. I've got a 5mm shoulder either side, and a 30mm tenon is what I'm going to be using. So this piece here will be waist. So that's going to sit in there just like that, and we'll have another one there just like that. So what I'm going to do now is go chop these tenons out on the table saw. I'm going to make this as quick as I can possibly make it. So yeah, we'll do some cuts with this, clear out this waste, and then we can start chopping our mortises. And we're going to do some wedged tenons. So I'm not going to put too much pressure in these wedges. It's not a good idea to drive wedges in and split the material this way. Usually wedged tenons kind of go with the grain up and down rather than across the grain where you can split it, but there's not going to be much pressure in these. It's going to be more of a decorative tenon than an actual pure wedged tenon. But yeah, let's get on and do it. Okay, there we go. Our tenons are cut out nice, quick and easy with the crosscut sled on a table saw. Just a little bit of cleaning up to do here, and just work back to that marking gauge line. So yeah, it's nice and quick and easy, and it's easy to be accurate. It's just a shame that they're so bloody noisy and dusty. It is certainly faster and easier to be accurate working with machines, but you pay the price in noise and dust. Okay guys, I've marked out my mortises, so both my pieces are marked out back and front. I've just measured down 90mm from the top and 60mm up from the bottom. That looked like a good spacing for my shelves, and I've measured in the mortise starting 15mm in from each end, and that will give me a 25mm gap in the middle, or a 1-inch gap in the middle, which would be nice for the design. So that's marked out. So I'm going to drill out most of the waste on the pillar drill with this, couple of Forstner bits, and then we'll chop these out with a chisel. We'll leave it slightly wider on the outside than on the inside, just for those wedge tenons. We're only barely going to wedge these. They'll be glued in place. Like I said, we're not going to put too much force into these wedges because you can risk splitting the grain, so they're going to be more decorative than anything else. So there you go. Mortise there, and corresponding on the other pieces. Okay, our mortises are all chopped. A little bit of chisel work. Just doing a test fit to see how it's all going to go together. Yeah, that'll be pretty cool. So there's a little side view of what we're looking at. So we have those nice curves either side, and we're going to do some wedge tenons like I said already. Now, Next thing to do is to make a decorative piece for the top and the bottom. So I want to turn the tops and the bottoms into tenons, and we're going to sit them into some sapele. So yeah, that's what we have so far. We could stop there, but I think we'll add just a little feet and a nice little top piece just to hold this all together. So yeah, let's put this aside for a second and we'll decide what we're going to do. Okay, so here's a very quick rough sketch that I've done out. So this is what we have so far. I'm going to add sapele to the bottom and to the top. So we're going to tenon the uprights into the bottom sapele foot and also into the top. So we're going to have a 10mm tenon that comes into that, and we're going to do some sort of a curved edge on the sapele. The sapele is going to be 30mm thick, 260 wide on the bottom and 200 wide on the top, and that should tie everything together. So let's do that. Okay, here we go, nice and planed up. We have a good reference edge here, so I'm just going to run this through the table saw now and cut it into the various strips of 30mm that we need. Okay, so just ran the sapele through the table saw, just cut it into 30mm blocks, nice and simple. I don't want to bore you guys with that, just more table saw work. Now, I'm just putting it on there. I actually quite like the squareness of that in contrast with the curve that I have here. The kind of square block top and bottom. I kind of like it now looking at it, so I'm going to leave it like that for now, and I might round it over later. So next thing to do is cut these into tenons, and then we need to mortise these so that they sit down on that. So let's get on that. We'll fit this all together, and then if we want to round it over, we'll round it over, but I'm quite liking just the square look. So yeah, we might run with that. Let's get on. Okay, so just marking these pieces, I'm going to put a 10mm tenon in the top and bottom of these, and we're going to cut this on the table saw as well, just because it's nice and quick and we can finish it off then with the chisel. Okay, so once again I've just used my marking gauge to set the height of my saw blade. Now, I'm going to use this for cutting tenons like I said, but I've only got one flat side, or no flat side on both sides, so I'm going to have to run this up against my stop to cut my tenon, flip it over, do this side, and then I'm going to have to come at it from this side. So I'm going to do all my pieces this way, reset up my stop, and then come back at it this way. So let's crack on. Okay, tenons are all cut, more or less. Just cleaning up the saw marks with the chisel. Obviously I haven't got a flat topped toothed saw blade, so you kind of get little grooves. You don't get a perfectly flat surface, so you just got a little bit of chisel work. Just take it back to that marking gauge line. Okay, next thing I want to do is just cut the cheeks off the edge of these, and I'm going to do this by hand because it'll be just as quick. Right, it's the following morning, we're back at it, so the tenons are now all cut. I've just took the shoulders off them, or the cheek pieces, so we've established a shoulder both sides, cleaned it up with the chisel, so that's ready to go. Now, I'm just marking out the mortises for the sapele pieces, top and bottom, and at this stage in a project, rather than working off dimensions off a drawing, I like to mark things in place, because little discrepancies do creep in throughout a project and they can add up. So it's always best, I think, at this point to hold your piece in place, get it nice and centered, and then mark your mortises using your actual piece that you're building to mark from. I think they call it relative measurement, but yeah, it's a good idea to do that. So that's exactly what I've done. So I've just placed everything in place and just scribed the line up exactly where my tenons are to mark my mortises. Now we can go get these cut out. Okay guys, I have a 12mm bit set up in the router and I've centered everything up. Now the nice thing about these Souter router lifts is that these hash marks are extremely accurate, and this one happens to be the exact center of the bit, so it makes it very easy to line up the fence. And I've just done a test cut with a piece here, running it through. So what I've done is I've marked the width of the bit, squared it off with my square so I can see the start and finish of the bit, and I'm just running these lines that I've squared down the face, you can see that on camera there, up against it. So it's just a case of drop this guy on, move it across, and just lift off. I'm not going quite to the line, I'll finish it off with a chisel. Now, obviously these pieces are quite small, and you don't want your fingers anywhere near a router bit, so what I've done is I've made a piece. I'll just zoom back out and show you this. Okay, there we go, we're zoomed out. So what I've done is just double-sided sticky tape. There's my piece that I'm routing underneath. This gets a really good grip, so I can just drop that on, move it across, lift it up, drop it on, and my hands are well away from the bit, and if anything was to kick off or anything like that, it would just throw this piece out and it wouldn't throw my hands into it. So I'm keeping my hands well away from it. So, you know, doing small little bits like this, especially the smaller pieces, getting your hands right in close in there is not a great idea, because if a router bit takes a finger off, that finger will not be going back on. It'll be basically mince meat. So yeah, they can't stitch mince meat back together. So yeah, that's the plan anyway, and it's working quite nicely. Just double-sided sticky tape with a piece on. Now obviously I've kept the back of this proud of this piece, so this top piece isn't what's referencing the fence, it's this piece here, so that's running against the fence. So yeah, nice and easy, and it's working quite nicely as well. So I'm going to get all these routed to depth and we'll finish them off with the chisel, and our hands are nice and safe. Okay, there we go. All our pieces are routed to depth using our stick-on safety device to pass everything through, so that worked out nicely, and all fingers are intact, most importantly. So do finishing work with this on the chisel now, just to square everything up, and we'll test fit these. Okay, so our mortise and tenon pieces are all on, they're fitting nice and snug, and I quite like the straight edge and the squareness of this corner in contrast to the curve that we have here. I just kind of like the design choice, so I think I'm going to leave them like that. We won't do too much more to them. I'll just soften off the edges here with a bit of sandpaper so there's no sharp or hard edges on any of it. We've a little bit of finessing to do just to get rid of some shadow lines and stuff like that, but that's only a small little touch up with the chisel and we should be good to go. So yeah, kind of happy with how it's turning out. We're almost there. Now, no project would be complete without a mistake, and I did make a mistake. So with the router, I overshot my line. You can see there's my line there. I overshot the line, so I had to square off this edge here. So we have a little block now to go in here. You can see the little step in it there, so it's only a very small piece. So make a block, we glue it in, we'll plane it back flush, and nobody will ever know. So we have a little mistake to repair, so let's do that. Okay guys, there we go. Kind of matched the grain nicely, just let it sit proud, glued it in place. Left it kind of proud this way as well. So when the glue sets up now, we'll plane this back and we'll recut this edge here so that it fits perfectly in our tenon again. So all repaired, no harm, no foul. Okay, so the next thing I'm doing is just cutting the slots for the wedged tenons. Now I'm just drilling some split arresting holes at the bottom of my slot. So if you don't do that and you just cut a slot in here and you drive a wedge in it, that split can continue on down through your piece of wood. So if you just drill a little small hole at the end of where your slot ends, that's just a place that the wood can expand and contract there, and it doesn't allow the split to continue on down. So a little split arrestor. So nice and simple, just a 4mm bit. Now like I said, these are going to be more decorative than they are functional, so it's probably not necessary to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's the correct thing to do. Okay, so that's all our slots cut for our wedge tenons. We've only to cut our wedges now. I'm going to get on and sand everything, so I won't bore you guys with that, but one little tip I will give you: all the joints are numbered now, and obviously I'm going to sand away all my marks. So what I'd like to do at this stage is just write all the corresponding numbers inside in the joint where they won't be seen inside in the mortises. so you won't see them, and then just inside on the walls or the sides of the tenons again where it won't be seen, so you still have all your numbers when it comes to assembling. You know which goes where, what's face out, what's face side, and all that good stuff. So it's a little tip. Now I'm going to get on and sand all this, and then we can get ready for final assembly. Okay, we're all sanded up, so I'm just getting everything ready for the final fit and final assembly. One little tip that I like to do is just put a little chamfer, just the barest little chamfer on those tenons so they sit down into that mortise. And if the corners of the mortise aren't absolutely perfect, this will kind of help. And it's just the barest little bit, just roll off those corners, and it just helps everything seat in nicely, and really helps those shoulder lines come together. So not much, just a bare chamfer. And just before I glue this together, there is our repair bit there. So when we put a bit of finish on this, that won't be seen, and it's up underneath the piece anyway, so there'll be no one looking at it. But yeah, there we go, all in, ready to go. Okay, time to assemble this, and the first piece I'm going to put on are sapele pieces. So I'm not going to put in my wedges just yet. I'm going to get this glued up and clamped, let that set up, and then we can start tapping in our wedges. So we'll do it in stages. So a small bit of glue inside these mortises is all we need. We don't want too much. Okay, they're after setting up, so I'm putting the sides on with the shelves in place now. So a little bit of glue inside in the mortise, just around the tenons. Not much because we're going to be wedging them in anyway. I've just clamped everything together to make sure that everything is nice and solid, and that everything is square, and we're good to go. And now we can just tap in the wedges. So I've just cut some little sapele wedges over on the bandsaw, nice and simple. So I'm just going to hammer them home. Little bit of glue on them, we'll slap them in, and then we'll decide. I might take these tenons back a bit. They're protruding about 10 millimeters. I was going to let them be decorative, but we might take them back a small bit more. We'll see. But first off, we'll get these in anyway, we'll let them glue up. Okay, here's all our wedges in place. Our wedge tenons are in. Now, only piece of advice I'd give you here is to put your two wedges in at the same time, because you put one in and hammer it home, you'll close up the space for the other wedge on the other side, and you won't get them in. So just set the two of them in, and then tap the two of them home together. That way you won't run into too many problems. And just be careful as well. These little wedges, even though they are little, they can put a whole pile of force into this timber. So again, I'm not really using these as pure wedge tenons, I suppose, because it is glued. But I mean, you could hammer them in and split this timber in half. So just tap them in, nice and handy, not too much. You don't want to spread them too much, and you should be good. So that's it. Nothing to do now, just let this glue set up, let it go off, come back, flush these off, and put a decorative chamfer on these tenons. A little bit more sanding, and we'll get the finish on. Okay guys, we are nearly there. So the wedge tenons are all finished up. I've just flushed them off. I just put a little decorative detail around them, just a little chamfer around the edges, just to tidy them up, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. So you have nice two little sapele lines inside the wedge tenons on the yoke. And I'm pretty happy with the overall design and how it turned out. Now, we're in the middle of a storm here, so there's going to be a lot of rain and wind noise. Hopefully the shed doesn't blow down, but I'm trying to crack on with this project. Now I'm going to get the finish on, and I'm going to use this. It's the first time I've used it. This is the Osmo poly oil, and it's the raw stuff. So this has a kind of a white tint in it, so it keeps the wood looking like its natural state. It doesn't put a yellow tint on it. Now sometimes that's preferable, to have a nice yellow tint, say in Danish oil and stuff, but this is just a raw oil. It keeps the wood looking raw whilst protecting it. So I'm going to have a go, apply a few coats of this, and we'll see what it's like. Okay, so I'm just applying this finish now. It's just a wipe-on finish. It's nice and easy stuff to use, and another really nice thing about this is there's no harmful chemical labels on the back of it, so it's all natural products that are in this, which is great, and there's no big pungent smell off it. And you can see, hopefully you can see that on camera, it looks like actual white paint, but that's just a little pigment that's in it. And I'm just applying it on here, so it kind of gives a wet look, but without actually changing the colour of the timber or tinting it at all. And like I said, it's just a nice wipe-on oil finish. I actually saw Matt Esley use this before. That's what turned me onto it, and I wanted to give it a go. Now you can build up a kind of a satin sheen with it if you apply a few coats. I think it takes about 12 hours for a coat to dry, so it's kind of one of those ones that you build up. But yeah, as you can see, it's not actually changing the colour of the timber at all. Okay guys, so there we go. We are all finished up. Everything is complete. So the finish has dried on it there now. So a nice little project from some upcycled old pieces of furniture, and it turned out really nice. So some nice joinery in this one with the wedged tenons and the mortise and tenons top and bottom. It was good fun to make. And I really like that finish, that polyaxile from Osmo, that raw stuff. Again, it hasn't changed the colour of the wood whatsoever. It's just like a lovely natural finish. It's almost like there's nothing on the wood whatsoever. It just gives it a little bit of a light sheen, but again, it doesn't change the colour. So yeah, I'll definitely be using that in some more upcoming projects. So hopefully you've enjoyed that one, guys. Give the video a thumbs up if you have. If you're new here, think about subscribing. Comments and questions below as always. And thanks to everybody over on Patreon for all your continued support, guys. It's very much appreciated indeed. So yeah, I'm going to give this into my daughter now. She can put her shoes on it, and hopefully it saves her knees in the future. So yeah, that's it, guys. I'm going to get out of here now. I shall see you in the next one. Take it easy.